But we've received a flood of questions about Sting with his recent arrival in AEW. Let me ask you a few of these, Jim.
Oh, God. And let me just start out by prefacing this, because I've had people on Twitter on me. Oh, I loved seeing Sting. Oh, I love seeing Sting. And Sting's great. And Sting sold all these T-shirts. And you can't figure out what they're going to do with Sting. Well, he's a landmine, a bonanza already, a gold mine. Number one, a lot of people don't have hearing comprehension. We tried to make sure we weren't knocking Sting as a person, but we were knocking the booking of Sting. Yes, it was exciting to see him, but it would have been even more exciting maybe if he'd done something. But then more importantly, the topic of our discussion was, he said that Tony Khan announces they've signed Sting to a long-term, multi-year, full-time deal. To do what? We're not saying that it's not great for people to see Sting back. We're saying that at 61 years of age with a bad neck that couldn't get legally, medically cleared by the WWE, how many matches is he going to have and against who? How else can you use him besides as wrestling? It's going to be old if he continues to show up and doesn't do anything. When he showed up in the rafters for a year, 20 years ago and didn't do anything, he'd previously for years been doing shit. And also people are saying, well, of course he's going to sell a bunch of T-shirts. Of course he's going to sell all kinds of merchandise because it's Sting. But they're paying him what I would assume to be millions of dollars based on every other previous job he's ever had. Are they going to sell millions of dollars worth of T-shirts? He's supposed to get them all this mainstream publicity. The only time they got mentioned was in the New York Times for doing a sappy song and dance. I don't see Sting instantly opening up doors to front page headlines or, fucking major pieces on 60 Minutes. And the biggest deal, which I thought was, I guess we didn't hammer it home plainly enough, but I thought was hanging out there, was the whole idea of every time you do this, when you bring a guy back from 20 years ago or 30 or whatever, it's the same thing when Vince does it. Everybody goes, oh my God, so-and-so's back. I'm so glad. Austin, Rock, whoever. It illustrates how much bigger the wrestling stars used to be than they are now. Here's a 61-year-old guy that comes out and people lose their fucking minds because he's more over and more famous and a bigger star than everybody they've got on their roster. And it's the same in the WWE when they do the same thing. And I understand, yes, you don't have to, but you should use legends. There should be a place for that specific legend to be used in the right way, not just let's sign people because they were stars on my favorite wrestling promotion when I was a kid and watched it on TV, and now my dad's a billionaire, without a clear plan of exactly what to do with them. And I'm still at a loss to see what they're going to do on a regular and long-term basis with Sting, given his physical limitations. And the fact that, once again, he makes everybody else look like a peon. Somebody said, well, they should make him Darby Allin's mentor. Well, that'd be great, except Sting's never actually kind of been a mentor, and I'm not sure that it's, it will necessarily translate. A lot of the times these guys are good at getting themselves over. But, Brad, do you notice that they say I'm stuck in the past? He's stuck in the 80s. But these companies are the ones that actually use guys that were big in the 80s and they book them to wrestle. I bring them out and honor them, or I make them commissioners, or I have some reason for them to be there on a limited basis to take advantage of their celebrity and their stardom, but I don't put them on the roster and have them overshadow the current talent. So who's stuck in the 80s? Me or the guy that's actually hiring the people that were big in the 80s? Go ahead, ask your questions.
Or in this case, the 90s, I guess you could say.
Well, the same thing. Sting was big in the 80s.
Well, he's big in 88 and 89.
Well, that's still the 80s.
It's still technically the 80s, but I feel like if you're going to lump someone in and give them a decade, it has to be more than 2 years at the end of the decade. I consider Sting more of a 90s guy.
He was big in the late 80s. He was big in the 90s.
Well, on that topic, our question from Rory in Shawano, Wisconsin. with Sting joining AEW, which version of Sting is your favorite or least favorite? Surfer Sting, Crow Sting, Joker Sting, or WWE Sting?
Well, there wasn't really much of a WWE Sting. Would he have just 2 matches? I can't even remember what he looked like.
Yeah, in my head, I was picturing Crow Sting in WWE, just older.
I think he was. And somebody also made the comment of what I said earlier. I said that the WWE already got the most out of Sting on his retirement and everything. And they're like, oh, they mistreated him. They beat him. And then, at the time I said, why'd you bring this guy in and beat him? But what I'm saying by got the most out of his retirement is they had him in 2 high-profile pay-per-view matches when people were still allowed in major fucking buildings, and then did a goddamn Hall of Fame ceremony on him, so it's pretty done. But at any rate, I wasn't watching WCW that closely, and especially just, for Sting when he was the Crow, but I know that's how he got over the best, just because everything was hot at that point, not necessarily due to the Crow. I liked the Surfer Sting because when he was young and blonde-haired, that was what he did, and it seemed to work best at the time. But I'll go with either. I didn't see the fucking Joker. I don't give a fuck about the Joker. The TNA stuff was miserable to me when he was in the heel group, but he wasn't a heel because nobody knew but Shitstain what was going on. But I would be fine with the Surfer or the Crow.